So on Thursday, I reacted to what I thought was a sure thing tournament appearance for the St. John's Red Storm, and I was wrong. And I also thought Seton Hall would make it as well, and I was wrong. And had a slight optimism on Providence, thought at least should have been considered, and I was wrong. Because yesterday on Selection Sunday, the committee thought otherwise, from many people's opinion. And despite being one of the best conferences in college basketball, considering three ranked opponents and the middle of the pack teams, plus the teams that were not so great, such as Villanova, Xavier, being pretty decent. I understand DePaul and Georgetown are in there. The Big East got completely snubbed and disrespected yesterday. It's really that simple. And I'm sitting there, and I understand all the upsets were happening, kind of like the worst possible case scenario, especially for my St. John's Red Storm. But what I was anticipating was a play-in. Just something, just get in. Get in. And clearly the committee saw Virginia, Colorado State, Boise State, these Mountain West teams, and was like, yeah, we're going to put 6. We're going to put that many in there. 6 Mountain West teams. But we're going to take the Big East. We're going to take the 3 ranked opponents, and that's it. We're going to completely ignore Seton Hall's victory over UConn or St. John's hot end to the season and all that, and Providence, their 21 wins. We're just going to ignore all that, and we're going to do that instead. Now, the Big East wasn't the only snub, but this is what I'm going to talk about is the Big East, because that was absolutely disgraceful from the committee. Disgraceful. And I'm not just saying this as a St. John's fan. I obviously went to St. John's, so you could say, you're biased. They didn't do enough. They should have, whatever. Seton Hall and those other teams, the fact that there are teams in the tournament right now that St. John's, Seton Hall, and Providence are better than is ridiculous. And whenever I hear be like, oh, they didn't do enough, stop whining, they didn't do enough. You don't think it's wrong that the Big East only gets 3 teams into the tournament? You don't think there's anything wrong with that? Like, all cool. You're going to say, okay, DePaul, Georgetown were that bad that we're going to sink the Big East completely. Xavier, Villanova, 6 teams in the Big East were legitimately very good. You saw it in the Big East tournament play. You saw Providence, how good they were. You saw St. John's, how good they were. UConn is just insane. And they're the best team in the country. And my pick to win it all, again. Because UConn is that good. And St. John's only lost to them by 5. So basically, because Seton Hall was in the first 4 out, good for them. Clearly, they valued their 2 victories over St. John's instead of St. John's putting him in there. That's fine. But St. John's not being in the first 4 out, they would have had to win the Big East tournament in order to get an automatic bid. And they had to face UConn, the best team in the world. Not to mention there's also Marquette and Creighton. Creighton lost to Providence, but Marquette really good. So the Big East has to voice up here, and I was happy that Pitino didn't go to the NIT and, didn't accept that bid, because you got to get better for next year. I mean, this is Cinderella time is over. There are real expectations next year. Like the whole honeymoon era of St. John's and Rick Pitino is kind of done after this year. And as much as it was enjoyable at times, there are moments where you could be like, okay, you probably should have closed out more games earlier this season, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. St. John's had these 6 games where they just couldn't close out against anybody. And that was a big problem. And probably the big reason they didn't have any victory versus a tournament team except Creighton. well said. Now, I believe Seton Hall is a tournament team. I believe Providence should have been one, but I digress. That's just what it was. And they didn't value it. And now St. John's is in this position where next year you're going to have to figure out how to close out games. You got to build a better roster here. And, I feel bad for the players on the team like Danish Jenkins and Joel Soriano, but, I really liked watching him play. And for Soriano, all these years at St. John's was a very good player. I mean, this year had his ups and downs, but overall, just awesome to root for. It was awesome to see him grow offensively as a big. And while I'm depressed, and I was depressed, I was very upset after that because I was like, this BS, I can never trust the NCAA with anything. It's times like yesterday where I can never take them seriously. And it's kind of why I have this love-hate relationship with college basketball. Just with I'm not the biggest fan of the NIL and how it's there's new rosters pretty much every year. Not the biggest fan of that. Happy the players are getting compensated, but that's about it. If the guy's not playing in 1 year, he wants to leave, and it's hard to really build something there. And then that college will take down, championships and stuff, over things that, are kind of ridiculous. And I just, when it comes down to these people making these decisions, I just don't trust them to make the right ones. And I was very disappointed. And, when it comes to college basketball, like, I'm just so upset with how they handled yesterday. And considering that the level of competition of basketball in the Big East, and they just completely just didn't care. And you see all these metrics and these bracketologists and all these things, and you're like, oh yeah, they know. No, you don't know, because it looked like under every metric possible, pretty much, that St. John's was going to get in, and they weren't even close. And that's disgraceful. I don't really know what their thinking is. If the net doesn't matter, then what does? I feel like this year was considerably more controversial with them. And it maybe will lead to changes. I have no idea. Probably not, but I thought the way Pitino handled it was great. Kim English was really pissed off at Providence. I don't blame him. And Holloway and Seton Hall, they're gonna go compete in the NIT. And then for the people who are like, why are people declining to be in the NIT? It's because with the new transfer portal starting now, why compete in a useless tournament, basically, and do that when you could just get started on next year already? I was just very disappointed. And that's really all I have to say, because I really thought St. John's was getting in. I thought Seton Hall was getting in. I was going to really be tuned in to college basketball. It's going to be hard for me to watch the first 2 weeks of this thing when I just see the crap that went on. I just hated all of it. Hated it.